Canada. This is a big opportunity. You know, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to see that there's been a lot of success in Canada over the years. Certainly Stampede and Montreal and a whole lot of other different territories. But man, when the business really got hot with Vince, they just set all kinds of records up there with Orndorff and Hogan. And then about 10 years later, they did it again. When maybe domestic business was down, they could always count on, man, let's stick Bret Hart on that show and just watch the fireworks. And you would see that passion come through at big WrestleManias, not just like Hogan and Warrior at WrestleMania 6, but man, just the crowd alone from Rock Hogan at 18 was just something else. And so now you have to know, man, if we could just run a show there. But boy, that sure does seem like a long way from the Asylum in Nashville or the Impact Zone in Orlando, but it's finally going to happen here in 2008. When was Canada on your radar? Tell us what the challenges were about doing a show in Canada compared to the way you've always done it here in America.
And this is something that we're talking 2008. So
that's right.
Yeah. So, you know, TNA launched 2002 for the quick refresher. So we're 6 years in, taking the pay-per-views on the road, gone from 1 hour on Spike TV to 2 hour. Our coverage in Canada continued to grow. Our international business continued to grow. And, you know, putting a show on in Canada, I can't say that it's not easy, but there is a whole, you know, the immigration, it's a different set of circumstances. Our pay-per-views from the beginning aired in Canada. So, you know, the transmission and all that wasn't a crazy deal, but just it's a different set of circumstances. But like you just mentioned, you know, there's 4 or 5 events we could talk about historically. One of the ones that always pops to my mind is that, you know, WrestleMania, it's going to sell out in the US or Canada, a big pay-per-view. But when the Attitude Era was hot and, you know, Rock Austin DX was rocking and rolling all over the world, you know, we go up to Toronto, and that's where I just referenced me and Edge had an IC title match, and we flipped the title, and we flipped it back in Buffalo at a pay-per-view, I think, you know, the next day. But for a house show, Conrad, if you got that Google machine out, Sky Dome.
Yeah, it was huge. Set a record for y'all.
30,000. You know, it was a big house. So Canada is obviously geographically very close, but it's a, you know, it is a, God, lack of a better word. Yes, it's a different country, but the wrestling fan base, and Owen was one of the ones that, in his unique sense of humor, we would chat about it, but then he'd be serious about it. I've had conversations with Brett as well. But the Canadian fan base, obviously they love their hockey, but they're very passionate about their professional wrestling. And you look at the territories, obviously Stampede was big, Montreal, back in the eastern provinces, they had that, Toronto, Maple Leaf Gardens, Jack Tunney, Billy Red Lions, and, you know, the famous blue checks from the WWE in Canadian dollars. But lots and lots of history. And at TNA, with, you know, a Canadian influence, Christian Cage, how relevant is that to talk about today? Christian was on our roster, obviously Team Canada, Eric Young, Bobby Roode, Johnny Devine, obviously Scott D'Amore. You know, we had a Canadian presence as far as talent goes as well. So we wanted to continue to grow, and it was you know, another stepping stone in the right direction to tour our pay-per-views. And we decided, let's go to a building. We weren't going to run. You know, it's really hard to get dates on the hockey buildings in up there in Canada, but we found us a good market and got the date and locked it in, and off we went.